Hey, everybody. It's been a big day, a lot to share with you all, so let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. It has been a wild day, and I have got plenty to talk to you all about, very much related to what we talk about on these streams. But yeah, we're going to have a good conversation tonight. This way this works, just like always. First, I give my opening remarks. Then from there, I do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I answer your super chat questions for the remainder of the night. So if there's something that you would like me to comment on, respond to, a question you'd like me to answer in the second half of the show, send a Rumble rant on the Rumble or a super chat on the YouTube, If you are on Facebook, you need to go to Rumble or you need to go to YouTube in order to send me a question. I'm taking questions the whole night. You know, as they're coming in during my opening remarks, I set them aside, but I'll make a point of answering them. That's the way it works. So, yeah, as far as announcements are concerned, right now we are building the Center for Political Innovation. Membership is open. We do need people to sign up to become dues-paying members of CPI. So if you become a dues-paying member, we would really, really appreciate it if you became a dues-paying member and signed up. Please go ahead and do so. The Center for Political Innovation is open for business, and we have got a very exciting 90-day plan of action. We published our letter to Donald Trump, which is linked down below. If you could share that letter, we really want that letter to get everywhere as possible. We have a plan to print it in a major newspaper as an ad. Very exciting stuff. We also have plans coming up for the inauguration. I am headed to Florida to support the Uhuru defendants in a couple weeks for their sentencing hearing. A lot is happening very quickly, very quickly. And I'll be talking about all of that tonight. And if you go and subscribe to the CPI YouTube channel, every morning we have morning messages. Dan Niswander is making sure we have morning messages every single morning to keep you plugged in to what our organization is doing. Just this afternoon, John McCarthy, our member, was on a stream supporting the Uhuru movement, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So stay plugged in, become a member of CPI. Yes, we are live. Become a member of CPI. And then on top of that, stay plugged in with the morning messages that are happening every morning. And we'll keep you up to date because things are just happening very quickly. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm really glad to be here with all of you tonight. So like I said, the way this works, first the opening remarks, followed by the roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. Then from there, I answer your super chat questions. Where is the link to the letter that I gave to Donald Trump? What's right down below? Right below in the description. It has the YouTube video, the Twitter video, and the video embedded on the CPI website. So if you can help us share that letter, that would be great. Answering your super chat questions or Rumble rant questions in the second half of the show. So let's slow down a little bit. It's been a wild day. A lot has happened. So I woke up this morning and found out that martial law had been declared in South Korea. Big big news. The president of South Korea, President Yoon, who's considered a lame duck, he's lost control of the parliament. He is the leader of the People's Power Party, which is the successor to the party of the military dictatorships, the party of Park Chung-hee, the party of Park's daughter, and their main opposition, the main opponent to the People's Power Party, which is the right wing, considered the right wing party, is what's called the Democratic Party of South Korea. And the Democratic Party now controls the parliament, and it is investigating Yoon for corruption. So President Yoon, who at this point only has a 17% approval rating, right? A very unpopular president, startled the nation by declaring martial law, giving a very emotional speech to the country on television. I'll show you some of what he said. He said, I will eradicate. All right, I guess I'll show the first part. He said, our National Assembly has become a den of criminals and is attempting to paralyze the nation's judicial administration system through legislative dictatorship and the overthrow of the liberal democracy system. The National Assembly, which should be the foundation of liberal democracy, has become a monster that collapses the liberal democracy system. Now, Korea is in a precarious situation where it has not been surprising if it collapsed immediately. Dear citizens, I declare emergency martial law to defend the Free Republic of Korea from the threats of North Korean communist forces and to eradicate the shameless pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering the freedom and happiness of our people and to protect the constitutional order. Holy shit. He declares that the parliament, which is under the control of the Democratic Party, is anti-state and pro-North Korean. And then from there he goes on. He says, I will eradicate anti-state forces as soon as possible and normalize the country. I will crush the anti-state forces and normalize the country as soon as possible. The declaration of martial law will cause some inconvenience to the good people who have believed in and followed the values of the Constitution of the Free Republic of Korea, but I will focus on minimizing these inconveniences. These measures are necessary for the perpetuation of a free Republic of Korea, and there is no change in our foreign policy stance of fulfilling our responsibilities and contributions in the international community. As your president, I earnestly appeal to you. I will devote my life to defending the Free Republic of Korea, relying solely on the people. Please trust me. Thank you. Dang. That last part, please trust me. That's a weird one, right? So, he's overthrowing the government. He's calling the military out to dissolve the parliament. He's overthrowing the government. And he's establishing martial law. And then he's saying, trust me, please trust me, even though he's got a 17% approval rating. What in the world is going on here? Well, what happened was the military then marched to the parliament building of South Korea and tried to block the parliament members from getting into the building. But the military was unable to do so, and the parliament members got into the building, and they voted unanimously, 190-0, to overturn the martial law, at which point the military said they wouldn't rescind the martial law until they got order from the president. Then the parliament said that they would impeach him and remove him from office if he did not rescind the martial law. And then he rescinded the martial law, and the military stepped aside, and the state of martial law was rescinded. Now, this was an attempted coup d'etat. The President Yoon of South Korea was attempting to stay in power with a military coup. But there's a lot going on here. Why did this happen? For several hours, we were wondering if South Korea was on the brink of having a military coup, if all the pro-democratic activists and all the anti-imperialists and all the people working for peace on the Korean Peninsula would be arrested. Everyone was worried about what might happen. I'm certainly in touch with a number of people connected to the situation in different ways, and everyone was kind of on edge about what might happen. But as of now, the coup has been called off, and it looks like President Yoon is going to be out of there pretty soon. But the bigger question is, why did this happen? That is the bigger question tonight. It's not simply a question of what happened, right? You can look all over the news to see what happened. No one saw this coming at all. I mean, generally, if a president's going to carry out a coup, he needs to have at least maybe 30, 40% of the population supporting him. But 17%? A lame duck president with 17% of the population supporting him? I mean, just wildly unpopular is going to pull off a coup. That's outrageous. And it was clearly a long shot. So I'm going to tell you what I believe is going on. But before I do that, I thought it might be cool to hear from RT's reporter in Britain, Afsan Rafsanjani. Afsan, he has the show Going Underground on RT. He gave this analysis of what is happening.
The South Korean president has declared martial law. Is it a season 2 trailer for Squid Game, the dystopian late capitalist drama, or something more serious? South Korea has long been a vassal state of the United States. It hosts the largest U.S. foreign base at Camp Humphrey and countless other bases. These happened after the years of dictatorship. Martial law actually hasn't happened since the late 70s. And dictatorship followed the wiping out of 20% of the people of Korea by Britain and the United States. It seems as though the president, who for personal reasons feels that his wife is being unfairly prosecuted and doesn't agree with the healthcare industry in South Korea, doesn't believe the CIA in Seoul or US military commanders when they tell him, do this, do that. That's because US hegemonic power is declining all around the world, a new BRICS world. And you can also tell by propaganda media in NATO nations, notably the MI6-connected Reuters agency, that media has de facto been told, do not support the president. Unlike, say, in Georgia, undergoing right now an attempted color revolution, which doesn't seem like it's going to be happening anytime soon. In fact, in NATO nations, when Korea comes up, it's usually with respect to lies about North Korean troops in the NATO proxy war against Russia through Ukraine. So watch out for the end of this president of South Korea as the CIA tries to desperately convene some kind of powerful interest there to retain their colony in Southeast Asia. Whatever is the case, don't believe what you're being told about the de facto base of South Korea, which in one way is known because of a Samsung Android phones and appliances, but actually poses as an independent country, but is long like the countries of Western Europe, where all media is censored. And I notice the first thing the president of South Korea did is he endorsed military rule and military martial law was to say the media must be banned from saying certain things, which is of course the case in Western Europe and Britain. So don't believe what you're being told about military martial law in South Korea.
So that's his analysis. And I mean, he's right. But there's a couple important details here. We have to put this in the proper context. All right? So what just happened in the United States? We had a very big election. It was very, very much an election where people didn't know who was going to win. And one of the candidates was a former president, who had met with Kim Jong-un and had been a champion of the peace talks on the Korean Peninsula. And the other candidate was a candidate who denounced negotiating with North Korea and opposed peace talks on the Korean Peninsula. And the American people in big numbers went out and voted for the candidate who had carried out peace talks on the Korean Peninsula, who bragged about it. And Donald Trump won the election because the American people want peace. And not only did Donald Trump continue bragging about negotiating with North Korea and moving toward peace with North Korea, but on top of that, he did it in the face of his own party, criticizing him. The Wall Street Journal is a very, very well-respected conservative voice, and they denounced Trump on multiple occasions and said he should stop bragging about wanting peace with North Korea because it didn't go anyplace. That didn't stop Trump. He continued bragging about how he offered a hand of friendship and peace to North Korea. On top of that, Donald Trump was asked repeatedly about the war in Ukraine, and he said he would end it immediately. And they confronted him on the debate stage, and they said, "Don't you want Ukraine to win?" And he said, "I don't care about who wins. I want the killing and the death to stop." And that was a big moment. And I would like us to revisit that moment because, again, that was big, right? Trump, Ukraine win. We can just revisit that moment. It's a really, really, really big moment. And throughout the campaign, Donald Trump said he was not concerned about, about whether or not Ukraine won the war. He just wanted the killing to stop. And that is really, really important. And Donald Trump won the election on that basis. And all these things are connected. But let's just revisit that moment from the U.S. presidential election, from the one debate that happened between Trump and Kamala Harris. Let's revisit that moment. And then we'll talk about why that is very, very, very heavily related to what just happened in South Korea, which it is, right? You might think it's completely unrelated, but if you think it's unrelated, you would be wrong, and I'll tell you why. But let's revisit that moment from the debate, right? This is that moment. Why is it not on the screen? All right, there we go. Hold on. Here we go.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
My God, thank goodness that man won the election. I mean, my goodness, if you are at all anti-imperialist, you have to be happy that that man won the election, okay? Yes, he's done a lot of bad things, and it's a complicated figure. He's not, part of, our movement necessarily. I mean, he's a complex figure who did a lot of bad things as president and all that. But my God, you compare his position there to everything that Kamala Harris said on the campaign trail. My goodness. Thank goodness Donald Trump won the election. And now Reuters is reporting that Donald Trump's administration, not only are they trying to resolve the war in Ukraine, even before Trump takes office, they are also now sending out the message they want to resume peace talks with North Korea. Now, let me tell you something about President Yoon, the president of South Korea, who attempted to pull off his coup today. President Yoon has repeatedly tried to send weapons from South Korea to Ukraine. That doesn't come up in American media a lot, but President Yoon is a big supporter of Ukraine and is very anti-Russian. And the Democratic Party that now controls the parliament, which he accused of pro-North activities, the South Korean Democratic Party has blocked him from sending weapons to Ukraine. They've said, no, you can't send them without the parliament's permission. And the Democratic Party of South Korea, that he called pro-North, that he accused of pro-North activities, etc., is not as pro-Ukraine as President Yoon is. That's an important detail here. President Yoon wanted South Korea to be very solidly on one side of the war in Ukraine, and the people in South Korea voted for the Democratic Party that did not. Right? The Democratic Party doesn't support Russia, but they're not all about South Korea getting all in. Now, why is this important? Why are debates about Ukraine in South Korea very, very important? Because North Korea and Russia have a very important military partnership. And President Putin of Russia went to North Korea and established a strategic military relationship with North Korea. So North Korea and Russia are very close. And I have been following closely, very closely, and I've been keeping you all updated on everything that is happening. And I've been telling you all about why the Korean Peninsula is key. It is absolutely key in understanding what's going on in the world. You may think it's just an obscure thing, right? There's been North Korea and South Korea since the 1950s. Not a big deal. It's a very key thing. And the reason for that is that North and South Korea, they remain divided, and the largest U.S. military base in the world is located in South Korea. There are all kinds of U.S. troops in South Korea, and there is big disagreement among the American elite about what to do about it. Donald Trump became the first president in U.S. history, the first sitting president to ever visit North Korea. And he went to North Korea, and he became the first president to visit North Korea. He walked across the demilitarized zone. And that was really, really important. That was a big moment. And he did it because he wanted to further the process of North Korea giving up its nuclear weapons and rejoining the world economy and having the sanctions that were imposed on them for proliferating nuclear weapons and leading the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, leaving the treaty, having those sanctions lifted. And Donald Trump was supported in doing that by a lot of great people like Jim Rogers, like Tulsi Gabbard, and others. They supported Trump in going to South Korea and going to North Korea. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was undermined by John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, and they did everything they could to undermine the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. And when Donald Trump left office, it became clear that there was a big difference between Donald Trump and the foreign policy establishment when it came to North Korea. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they did everything they could to reverse and roll back what Donald Trump accomplished. They resumed the provocative war games on the Korean Peninsula. And a lot of people don't understand what those provocative war games really are. People say, well, what's wrong with that, Caleb? We got the military aid South Korea to protect them from North Korea, and they practice. What's the big deal? Okay, this is why the war games are a really big deal. Imagine that there was a big, huge army from some country that doesn't get along with America in Mexico. Like, let's say there was thousands of Chinese soldiers and Chinese airplanes, Chinese tanks and weapons in Mexico. And once a year, they took all of their soldiers and all of their tanks and all their airplanes and all their drones and all of that, and they marched them right up to the U.S. border. Right? And they just, they said once a year, they just got thousands and thousands of soldiers and all kinds of military equipment and all kinds of airplanes, and they marched it right up to the border, and then they stopped. How would we feel about that in the United States? How would we perceive that? Now, people say, well, it's just a drill, Caleb. They're going to stop. Now, would we be okay with that, right? Thousands of foreign troops, all kinds of threatening missiles that could kill Americans and all of that, and they march them right up to the border, and then they stop. They say, guys, it's only a drill. What are you upset about? It's obvious. It's not simply a drill. It's a provocation. It's a threat. They are demonstrating what they're capable of, and they don't know which time the provocative drill doesn't turn out to be a drill. Right? They don't know what year they amass all their soldiers and all their airplanes and all of their drones, and they march them right up to the border, and it turns out to not be a drill. And we have a war on our hands. And we wouldn't tolerate that on our borders, right? If somebody was engaging in that kind of provocative activity, we would respond. So whenever North Korea is faced with one of these provocative drills from the United States, what does North Korea do? It shoots off missiles to show, look, if you do attack, if it turns out to not be a drill this time, we have missiles we can fire back at you. So don't do that. And that is what has been behind all of this. Well, Donald Trump, what he did when he was president was he suspended the drills. He froze those provocative drills. He stopped doing them. Well, Joe Biden started them up again. And then Joe Biden sent nuclear submarines to South Korea. Submarines that are capable of carrying a nuclear weapon. Now, it's not stated whether or not they actually have nuclear weapons on them, but it's implied that they do. And Joe Biden sent nuclear submarines to South Korea. So North Korea responded by shooting off missiles, and, there was an escalation. And then what happened? Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited North Korea and established a very close military alliance between North Korea and Russia. And at that point, the United States sent more nuclear submarines, and there were provocations that took place. And then, for a while, South Korea was going along with it. And then they stopped. They just stopped. And after they stopped, after South Korea just kind of stopped escalating things, the United States was so angry that Putin had gone to North Korea, was so furious. How dare North Korea and Russia establish a relationship, and they were demanding all these provocations, and they stopped. And then what happened? Sue Mi Terry, who was the longtime CIA agent and was the top advisor on Korea Matters to the Obama White House and the Bush White House, Sue Mi Terry was indicted for being an unregistered foreign agent. They claimed that South Korean intelligence officials had bought her handbags, had taken her to her favorite clothing store and bought her some handbags. So Sumi Terry was an unregistered foreign lobbyist of South Korea. And the top Korea expert, the top, friend of South Korea in Washington, D.C., got charged with a very serious felony. And she could be facing up to 15 years in prison. This is pretty big. This is pretty big stuff. And even President Yoon, because he stopped escalating against North Korea the way that the Biden administration wanted, he then went ahead and offered peace to North Korea. He gave a speech in which he offered a peace deal to North Korea, the exact opposite of what the United States wanted to do. And now, President Yoon, who's wildly unpopular because his wife has been caught engaging in insider trading with German car companies, he's on his way out. And he can't convince the South Korean people that they should be sending weapons to Ukraine. They don't want to do it. They don't want South Korea to spend its money in Ukraine. And there's a lot of anger in South Korea about the ways that South Korea has hurt its own economy for the benefit of the United States. South Korea has cooperated with U.S. efforts against Chinese computer chips that have hurt their economy. South Korea needs Chinese investment, and they do business with Russia. They want Russian investment. And there's a lot of people in South Korea that are just like, no, working with the United States doesn't benefit us. Doing what the United States says doesn't benefit us. And, we really don't gain from escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula. And now in the United States, we have elected a president who himself has said he wants to make peace on the Korean Peninsula. This is big. We have a president who won an election on a platform of he will make peace on the Korean Peninsula and he will end the war in Ukraine. And you'll notice that the Biden administration has gone crazy in the last few weeks. And they're shooting missiles into Russia. And there's the attempted coup going on in Georgia. There's chaos in the streets of Georgia, anti-Russian, hysteria in the streets of Georgia. And now there was this attempted coup in South Korea. Now, what's interesting is it appears the United States did not support President Yoon. The U.S. government didn't have his back. Even though President Yoon is the more pro-U.S. figure who wants to send weapons to Ukraine, etc., nah. The USA said no. And they probably looked at his approval ratings of 17%. And they looked at the corruption scandal with his wife. And the USA thought, we want to be able to influence the people who replace President Yoon. We don't want to completely burn this bridge. So, no, you're on your own, buddy. President Yoon, I must say, this is a really, really stupid thing he did today. He declared martial law for no reason in the hopes of staying in power. He was already on his way out. He's already going to be impeached. And this was an epic blunder on his part. But what it is, and I will tell you what it is, it's the same thing as Biden and the French government, the U.S. government and the French government sending ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. It's the same thing as this attempt to overthrow the government of Georgia. This is the Washington establishment, the permanent war apparatus, getting desperate. And why are they getting desperate? They're getting desperate because it appears that an administration is coming into office that isn't solidly under their control. Now, that doesn't mean this administration isn't full of people. I mean, Marco Rubio, my goodness. Marco Rubio is not a great guy. He's certainly not an anti-war activist. He's very bad on all kinds of issues. So there's certainly people in it that aren't as good. But that said, Donald Trump Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Gaetz, Kash Patel, the FBI director. It appears that Donald Trump has appointed to his cabinet a number of individuals who are at odds with the permanent war state in Washington, D.C. And it appears that a lot of people could be losing their jobs pretty soon. And I mean, this is outrageous. I mean, why do we have millions of people whose livelihood and money depends on a semi-permanent state of war? I mean, that is so messed up. Peace is so much more profitable from war. But since the end of the Second World War in the United States, we've had what they call the military-industrial complex. They call it military Keynesianism. So what is Keynesianism? All right. John Maynard Keynes was the economist from Britain who, during the Great Depression, he had the idea that in order to keep the economy going, the government needed to spend money. John Maynard Keynes disagreed with Karl Marx. Karl Marx said the problem of the Great Depression, poverty created by abundance, he called it overproduction. Right? The problem of the Great Depression, just like the problem we're living in now, is the irrationality of the market. There's a story called the coal miner's riddle. The little boy says to his father, "Father, why is it so cold in our home?" The father says, "Because I can't afford any coal to heat the stove to keep us warm." The little boy says, "Father, why can you not afford any coal to heat the stove and keep us warm?" He says, "Son, I can't afford any coal because I have lost my job at the coal mine. I got laid off." And he says, "Father, why did you lose your job at the coal mine? Why did you get laid off?" He said, "Because there's too much coal." And that is the problem that caused the Great Depression. Production became so efficient under the great innovations of Taylorism and Henry Ford and assembly line production. We were so good at churning out products that the market was full of products that couldn't be sold, and workers' wages were not high enough to buy those products, and people lost their jobs. And this is the boom-bust cycle, right? Poverty created by abundance, poverty amid plenty. And this is the built-in problem that happens in the capitalist market, right? And there's all kinds of mechanisms the government has developed to deal with this. And that's why the government buys cheese from farmers and buries it in a cave in Missouri. There's billions of dollars of cheese that's just buried in a cave in Missouri in order to keep the dairy costs and the dairy prices high enough that farmers don't go out of business, right? This is a big thing. And during the Great Depression, this was a big problem in the global economy, was overproduction. So the Marxists all said that this is overproduction. This is the value crisis, as we at Center for Political Innovation have started calling it, because people don't, when you say overproduction, they just think too much stuff, and that's not what we mean. We mean people not being able to buy it. So we call it the value crisis. But regardless, that was happening all over the world during the Great Depression. So in Britain, there was an economist named John Maynard Keynes. And John Maynard Keynes, he was not a Marxist. He was a liberal economist. And John Maynard Keynes, he came forward and he said, we need to resolve this crisis by having the government spend money. The Marxists said we need to resolve this crisis by having the centers of economic power, the banks, factories, and industries under public ownership. But John Maynard Keynes said, no, we need to resolve this crisis by having the government spend money. And, the classic example of Keynesianism is the government hires a group of men to go and dig a hole. And then it hires another group of men to go and take the dirt and fill those holes back in. And people say, well, that's a waste of money. That's government waste. But John Maynard Keynes points out, all of those men take their pay home and they pay their rent and they buy food, and that gets the economy moving again in a crisis of unemployment. And that Keynesian economics is the idea that the government spends money to stimulate the economy to hold off the problem of overproduction. John Maynard Keynes insisted it's not overproduction, it is underconsumption. The issue is not that the capitalists are churning out so many products and having to churn out more and more products. The issue is simply that the wages of the worker are not enough to buy the products that are already there. So if we have the government spend money, that will enable people to keep buying the products, and we can avoid economic crisis. And in the United States, we have adopted a form of Keynesianism called military Keynesianism. And since the end of the Second World War, the way the U.S. economy has kept rolling along is that we spend billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on weapons, right? And this is how the U.S. economy keeps rolling along. We have the biggest military budget of any country in the world. I believe it's bigger than like the top 10 other countries combined. I mean, it is a massive military budget, and we keep the economy rolling along by spending lots of money on weapons and selling weapons to the entire world, developing new weapons systems, hiring people to, giving contracts to Lockheed Martin, giving contracts to, General Electric and all kinds of companies in order to figure out new weapons and design new weapons, and that just billions of dollars get dumped into the U.S. economy in order to keep the economy from crashing. We spend lots and lots of money on weaponry. That's just how the U.S. economy has been working for a long time. And in addition to spending money purely on weaponry, we have created the intelligence apparatus, right? The National Endowment for Democracy gets a huge amount of taxpayer money. And the CIA and the intelligence agencies, they have big budgets that they don't, that are undisclosed, that are secretive, where they can't tell you how the money is spent because it's classified or whatever. And the Ford Foundation and various Rockefeller foundations have a partnership with the U.S. intelligence community. And they dump all kinds of money into hiring academics to write papers that they want, into rewarding people in the press for talking the way that they would like, into, funding activism for causes they believe in, and all kinds of stuff. And there's a whole bunch of this. And that whether it's the weapons that get created and funded with our taxpayer money, or it is the people that are getting paid to write papers about how China's supposedly oppressing the Uyghurs, or the people that are getting paid to write papers about how Russia is an evil country that is terrorizing people in Ukraine, or whether it's people that are getting paid to say, don't listen to RT, it's an evil TV network, it's propaganda from Russia, or it's bot and troll farms that counter disinformation. The U.S. State Department has a huge budget of millions of dollars that is spent to counter disinformation, and we all know what that is. That's to run smear campaigns against guys like me and to, promote social media content that reinforces U.S. regime change wars, etc. There is a whole group of people, there's a whole lot of people whose entire livelihood depends on the U.S. government spending millions and millions of dollars to develop new tanks and weapons and guns and bombs and drones, and to run propaganda campaigns against Russia, against China, against Iran, against Venezuela, against Cuba, against Vietnam. And that this apparatus that has been created by the American government, it's big. And our regular economy is not doing so well. And this section of the government that has been created, the foreign policy establishment, the deep state, when people talk about the deep state, this is kind of what they're talking about. I mean, it's a little bit more than that, but the foreign policy establishment, the deep state, are all people whose livelihood depends on this. They depend on the USA being at odds with Russia, at odds with China, at odds with Venezuela and Cuba and Iran, depends on the USA selling weapons all over the world, depends on billions of our tax dollars being pumped into demonizing certain countries, hating countries, threatening countries. And there's this whole apparatus that has been created that depends on U.S. foreign policy remaining as it is. And Donald Trump doesn't totally disagree with that, right? Some of Donald Trump's biggest supporters are people that are totally in this game. Marco Rubio, for example. Donald Trump has got a lot of support from Miami Cubans. And you bet those Miami Cubans, they're all getting government contracts to pump out hate Castro, hate Cuba propaganda like you wouldn't believe. He gets a lot of support from the Shahs and the Persian exile community in Los Angeles. And those people are all running. The USA has hundreds of TV stations that get broadcast into Iran on satellite TV, you know, where the money for that's coming from, that spread propaganda against the Iranian government. So Donald Trump isn't completely opposed to this foreign policy establishment, this deep state, but he's just kind of talking common sense. And he's saying, look, we don't want to provoke a war with Russia. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine. Look, I'm going to go to North Korea and negotiate with them. And he's just kind of talking common sense. He's got one foot in it, especially around Israel, Iran, Cuba. But he's got another foot in the other side when it comes to Russia, when it comes to North Korea, etc. And you can really compare this to Abraham Lincoln. Did Abraham Lincoln want to abolish slavery? No, he did not. He took office on a platform of saying, look, I am not going to let slavery run the government of the United States anymore. Abraham Lincoln's position was, you all can do slavery in the South, but this policy, this fugitive slave law that says if a slave gets free, we have to track them down for you. No, not doing it. If a slave gets free and gets to another state, that's, you're shit out of luck. We're not going to go arrest the slave and give him back to you. Not doing it. Abraham Lincoln also said the new states that were coming into the United States, like Kansas and Iowa, no slaves in those new states. And the slaveholders whose power and existence depended on maintaining slavery got so threatened that they took up arms and tried to overthrow the government because they were threatened. Even though Abraham Lincoln didn't want to abolish slavery, the fact that he was restricting it, the fact that he was boosting anti-slavery sections of U.S. society, that was too much for them. And that's the situation that we have right now. Donald Trump is not an abolitionist of the permanent war deep state apparatus. He's not, right? When it comes to certain countries, he's fully on board with them. But he's not going to completely play ball with them. He's not going to let them tell him what to say. When they asked him, don't you want Ukraine to win? He was like, no, I just want the killing to stop. I'm not concerned about it. He will occasionally get up and say things. And he was friendly with North Korea. And that Donald Trump is just not completely on board with this permanent war apparatus that has been created. And this permanent war apparatus is far bigger than the United States. In fact, most of it's around the world. A lot of the money and funding goes to people in other countries that are doing things we don't even know about. We're giving weapons to people in other countries. We're setting up military bases in other countries. We're sending our people to other countries. We're funding protest movements in other countries. We're funding propaganda in languages that we don't know, that we don't speak over here. There's this whole apparatus. And what has Elon Musk been appointed to do? He's running the Department of Government Efficiency. And what is that? That's a section of the government that's going to go look into eliminating waste. And Donald Trump is talking a big game like, hey, we don't need to just be at war with all these other countries. And a lot of people in the foreign policy establishment are saying, oh, shit. Our jobs are on the line. Our livelihoods are on the line. We need this crazy permanent war state, this crazy regime change, this crazy military spending. We need this to continue. We can't let this guy in office. Even though he's not for abolishing it, we can't let this guy in office. That's their attitude. And you saw one of them tried to kill Donald Trump, Ryan Roth, who was a Ukraine activist who was working with the U.S. State Department to recruit people from around the world to go to Ukraine to fight against Russia. And he was an American guy with a huge criminal record and lots of mental illness who went to Ukraine and bragged about how he was working with the U.S. State Department to recruit people to fight against the United States or against Russia in Ukraine. And then he came back to the United States and tried to kill Trump. And there was another assassination attempt. We don't know what that person's motivation was. That was very strange, certainly very, very strange. But regardless, there's a whole apparatus that has been created that is based on maintaining this very, very dangerous mode of operation, which is the USA antagonizing countries all over the world, pushing further and further against Russia, against North Korea, against China, against Cuba, against Iran, against Venezuela, etc. And there's enough people in Washington, in the FBI, in the Pentagon, in the military that are saying, look, this isn't going to work. We just can't do this anymore. We're going to blow up the world. We're having huge problems here in the United States with our bridges collapsing, with our drinking water not being properly purified, with the power grid in Texas collapsing. There's big problems here. We can't keep doing this. We just can't keep doing this, and we've got to find a new plan. And on top of that, our government, we're so far in debt, we just can't keep playing this game. We can't keep playing this game. This game can't continue. We just got to stop. We got to cut back on this. And a lot of people that are very, very heavily invested in that are very afraid that they'll lose their livelihoods, are very afraid that they'll lose out, and they're quite fired up. On top of that, we know that there is a big division among the American ruling class. And this division is very old. They talk about the Yankee and Cowboy War. The old money, the Eastern establishment, they have always been the people that run those foreign policy think tanks. They have always been the people that are guiding the Council on Foreign Relations. Look at the Rhodes Scholar Program. How many people in the U.S. government are Rhodes Scholars? Well, what's the Rhodes Scholar Program? Well, Cecil Rhodes was a British guy who colonized Africa. And Zimbabwe used to be called Rhodesia after Cecil Rhodes because he took it over. And Cecil Rhodes, when he died, he left all the money in his estate to create a secret society for the maintaining of the British Empire. That's actually the language that he used. Now, I don't think they created some stupid group with, hand signals and, secret passwords or anything like that. But what eventually came out of his estate was the Rhodes Scholar Program. And if you look all throughout the American government, Rhodes Scholars are everywhere. And all the people who end up moving up in this kind of foreign policy regime change establishment are all people that get selected by the Rhodes Scholar Program, and they go over to Oxford University in Britain, and they get cultivated and groomed to see things as Cecil Rhodes saw them, to believe in free trade, to believe in the ideals of the British Empire. That's openly what the Rhodes Scholar Program is set out to do, to teach the ideals of the British Empire, to promote free trade, which is the domination of the world by British banks and British monopolies. And that comes with a spoonful of other things, Malthusianism, and the idea there's too many people in the world and we need to curb overpopulation. The belief that some people are inherently superior to others, right? Social Darwinism is a big part of British Empire ideology. Free trade, free markets, and the belief that we must do everything we can to maintain this kind of ocean-based, global system, right? And that the Eastern establishment, the Anglo-American establishment, the Rhodes Scholar Program, etc., it cultivates a layer of people. And if you look at the Council on Foreign Relations, and if you look at the U.S. foreign policy establishment, the people that are really tied in with the Ford Foundation and the World Economic Forum and all these well-funded outfits, the National Endowment for Democracy, a lot of them are very much tied in with what you could call the Eastern establishment, the network of very wealthy old money families, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, the old money that has been running the United States for many generations. And their main opponent has been the new wealth, the lower level capitalists who just want to make money. They don't really care about some long-term thing. They're not committed to the ideals of the British Empire. They believe in capitalism because they're rich, but that they believe in the ideals of the British Empire. No, some of them are evangelical Christians who don't even believe in Darwinian evolution. So why would they believe in social Darwinism, right? Some of them are interested in trading and doing business with China because it's a way to make money. Some of them are interested in doing business with Russia because it's a way to make money. And that there's a layer of wealthy people that just aren't part of this club. that aren't part of this Anglo-American establishment, that are not embedded in this U.S. permanent war apparatus. And they have come together and they are backing Donald Trump, and they're Trump's biggest supporters. Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, Bernie Marcus, the owner of Home Depot. There's others, Betsy DeVos. She is the billionaire who Trump named as his education secretary. She ran the Department of Education under Trump. But where did her money come from? She's a billionaire, but she's the founder of Amway, the Tupperware parties, right? The multi-level marketing group, Amway. On top of that, her brother is Eric Prince of Blackwater, the military contractor company. And these are wealthy people, but they're not part of the club. They're not part of this foreign policy establishment, and they're not really concerned with carrying out long-term foreign policy goals. They just want to make money. Another one, Hobby Lobby, the family that owns Hobby Lobby. They're evangelical Christians, right? They are against gay marriage, right? They're socially conservative. They've been widely canceled. Chick-fil-A, right? Again, another socially conservative evangelical Christian family, that owns Chick-fil-A. And I mean, these are people that are wealthy, millionaires, billionaires, but they're not part of this Eastern establishment, this foreign policy establishment that dominates American politics. And because they're not part of it, they don't share its goals. And they tend to believe in libertarianism, free market economics. They want the government out of the economy. They believe that capitalism just kind of magically works if the government is not involved. And so you've got Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy coming in there, and they are going to cut government spending, right? They are going to cut government spending like crazy. Well, where does this whole foreign policy establishment, where does its money come from? It comes from the ultra rich, and it comes from the government. And there's a lot of people whose livelihood depends on the USA hating Russia, spending more money on demonizing Russia, etc. There's a lot of people whose livelihood depends on hating North Korea, having USA send lots of weapons to South Korea to oppose North Korea. All these people, they're on the chopping block. And so now they seem to be desperate. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says that Donald Trump is not safe. Now, as someone who's met Putin on 3 occasions, been in the same room with him, someone who's directly spoken to Putin, I'm going to tell you, he knows what he's talking about. He knows all about the spy world and the intelligence apparatus. And if Russian President Vladimir Putin is telling us that Donald Trump is not safe, I believe him. I absolutely believe what Russian President Vladimir Putin is saying there. And we saw 2 assassination attempts, and then we already have the script prepared. They're already saying Iran did it with regard to Trump, right? It's almost like Trump hasn't been assassinated. They tried to kill him twice, and it failed. But we now know what the script is if anyone is successful in harming Trump. They're going to say Iran did it. That's the script. They've already got it. The FBI's already got it, right? It's pretty obvious Ukraine tried to kill Trump. Ryan Roth was a fucking Ukrainiac, right? A Ukraine activist, a convicted felon who went over to Ukraine and all of that. It's pretty obvious Ukraine tried to kill Trump. The mainstream media just doesn't notice that. They just, it's very obvious. The guy is a Ukraine activist, Ukrainian military guy, comes to the United States, writes a manifesto against Trump, tries to kill Trump, and then they just, oh, that's weird. But Iran did it, and that is their narrative. They want to blame it on Iran. And they already have it set up that if Trump ends up getting harmed, it will be blamed on the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I do think Donald Trump is in a great deal of danger. I think Putin is absolutely right about that. And I also think Donald Trump is the best hope this country has had in a long time. And I really want Donald Trump to be safe because Donald Trump, I trust him a lot more than I trust, the VP. I really don't trust JD Vance. I'll be honest. JD Vance, not fully on board. He's saying a lot of things now about Ukraine and stuff that I agree with, but I see him as a very manufactured figure. Trump, on the other hand, is just a very, very wealthy guy who is working in his own self-interest. And that's the point. He's not a team player. He's not one of theirs. He's not part of this foreign policy apparatus that they have created. And because he's not part of this permanent war apparatus they've created, because he's just working in his own interest, he's a threat to them. You know, that was the talking point throughout the campaign. Oh, Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump. Good. Good. That's what's good about Trump. He cares about Donald Trump. He's not a team player with imperialism. He's not on board with their agenda. He's not, getting talking points from CIA mainstream media. He's not concerned about advancing the interests of the British Empire and American free trade around the world. He just cares about Donald Trump. Good. That's the best thing about Donald Trump. And that's why Donald Trump might do good things, because it'll be good for his career, because that's what the American people want. The next time somebody says that to you, says, oh, Donald Trump just cares about Donald Trump, say, good. Good. Wouldn't you rather have a self-interested politician who might want to become more popular by doing good things instead of having somebody who's been cultivated and groomed and trained to be one of their agents? Donald Trump is working for Donald Trump, and that's why, despite all the bad things he did in his first term, he did some good things, like meeting with Kim Jong-un, like, not escalating too much against Russia, like starting no new wars, right? Like letting a lot of people out of federal prison. Donald Trump did some pretty good things when he was president the first time. He did some bad things too, murdered Qasem Soleimani, etc. But now we're starting to learn, and this is where it gets very interesting, we're starting to learn that Donald Trump apparently tried to do even more good things. Donald Trump wanted to make peace with Venezuela during his first term. Anya Parampil revealed Donald Trump wanted to meet with Maduro and work out a deal between the U.S. and Venezuela. And apparently there are now, according to reports of the Wall Street Journal, there are a number of wealthy friends of the Trump administration that are pushing him to do the same thing. Marco Rubio obviously does not want that. And there are a lot of people in the Trump cabinet that certainly don't want that. But apparently there is a big layer of Trump supporters that are pro-Maduro, pro-Venezuela. And Maduro saw that Donald Trump was being threatened by the American foreign policy establishment and supported him at the time of his assassination. I'm telling you, there is potential here for Trump to do good things. And I'm telling you all that. And I am telling you all of this because our organization, we wrote a letter to Donald Trump. We've been out in the streets with the Trump-Kim banner, pushing for Trump to be a peace president. Only peace can make America great again. But I'm telling you, right, one thing that we need to do, and I'm working on different ways of doing it. The inauguration is going to be really important. Look, the world wouldn't be going to hell right now in the lead up to the inauguration if there wasn't some feeling that things might change after the inauguration, right? I see so many people that are just saying, oh, it's going to be all the same. There's no difference. It's like, there's differences. It's not going to be perfect, and there's potential for a lot of bad to happen. But why did Yoon just try to overthrow the government of South Korea and accuse pro-North Korean activities and all of that? Why is Biden escalating toward World War III in Ukraine with the ATACMS missiles? Why are they desperately going all in on their coup in Georgia, right? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Why? Because there's a fear. There seems to be some pretty clear indications that Donald Trump is not going to let them do it as much as they would like. And if they thought everything was going to be fine, and if they thought, oh, Trump is just saying that to get elected, they wouldn't be escalating things right now. They would be de-escalating things. But there's a desperation on the part of the American foreign policy establishment to get every last punch in right now. And that should tell you something. That should tell you something. And that is why, all right, again, I am constantly thinking about what can we do? What can we do? Well, we wrote our letter to Donald Trump. We're trying to figure out if we can get it published in a major newspaper before Trump takes office. In addition to that, we are planning to go to Washington, D.C. on the day of the inauguration. We've rented a nice hotel. We're going to have a reception with food. But there's another thing that we can do, which is that I don't even know. I almost don't. I'm beside myself with stupidity. I mean, when I see the stupidity here, the Answer Coalition, which is supposedly anti-NATO, supposedly anti-war, they are planning to have a big anti-Trump riot on Inauguration Day. All right. And they've got this website for the People's March and all of this. And I mean, it's beyond me how they could do this. And I mean, if they claim to be anti-war, Trump got elected on an anti-war platform. Mainstream media is attacking him for being too friendly to Russia, being too friendly to North Korea, for not, wanting to. And they're going to have a big rally against Trump. Well, we know what happened in 2017 when Trump took office. There was a huge bloodbath in the streets of D.C. And we also know what happened on January 6th. There was a huge, the Capitol riot, all of that. January 6th, 2021, things got messy. So the Answer Coalition is organizing this big protest that is Trump derangement syndrome, right? Trump is racist. Trump is sexist. Trump is not in favor of abortion. Trump is homophobic. He's transphobic. And they're planning this big rally in Washington, D.C. When Trump takes the oath of office. And I think we should do everything in our power to put pressure on the Answer Coalition to cancel this demonstration. And I am working on an open letter to Brian Becker, the leader of the Answer Coalition, that we can circulate, and we can start a campaign, people calling their offices. They must call this rally off. They must cancel the pro-NATO riot, right? And I don't think they're going to listen to us, but we should make it abundantly clear to the world what's coming. We saw what happened when Trump took office the first time and all the chaos in the streets of D.C. We saw what happened when the transition from Biden was happening and what happened with the FBI, provocation January 6th. And we should get ahead of this and say there's going to be a pro-NATO riot against Trump because he's opposed to the U.S. foreign policy establishment, and call it off. Right? And, I've written a draft of an open letter to Brian Becker, and we can get their phone numbers. All their offices have staffers and phone numbers, and we can just, in the lead up to it, closer. I mean, I'm talking January. It's January 20th is the inauguration. So closer to the time in January, we can just pull out all the stops and put an effort to try and raise the alarm about what they're doing and make clear that those of us who are genuine anti-imperialists do not approve of the NATO riot. We don't approve of this pro-NATO riot that they are planning, right? And I wrote a very carefully worded letter. I'm editing it. I'm consulting with some different people. And, now is not the time, right? In the lead up to it, right, as it gets closer, right, the beginning of the year next year, I think we should go all out to warn the public about what is happening and where it's coming from. Because I have noticed that certain people in the Trump camp are already trying to say it's China, trying to say it's China's fault. China's planning the riots against Trump. No, this is a NATO thing. Brian Becker's demonstration was advertised in the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian, which is the voice of the UK foreign policy establishment, the voice of the British Empire, did a big advertisement for Claudia Dela Cruz and her presidential campaign. It was just a big, long article about how amazing they were. They're anti-racist, blah, 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 blah. And it's very clear they are being used by the NATO establishment that wants blood in the streets before the Trump administration takes the oath of office. Now, I'm sure they're claiming they're going to be peaceful. But we know what happened the last time Trump took office. And we know that even if their intentions are pure and they're intending to have a purely peaceful rally, we know what happened. And their crowd is going to be used by provocateurs, by Antifa, by other people like that. And so we need to put a pressure campaign on them to cancel the rally and to raise awareness very loudly. So if anything does happen, which stuff is going to happen, I think, on the day Trump takes office, if there's anything about it, we will have warned people ahead of time. We will have raised the alarm. And this will make clear to Trump, look, we're on your side here. If you want to stop World War III, if you want to stand up to NATO, there's people like us, CPI. We will be having your back. Now, we're not going to have your back when you do stuff we don't agree with, but as long as you're standing up to imperialism, standing up to the deep state, standing up to the globalists, as long as you're standing up for American civil liberties, we will be in the streets and we will have your back, Trump. And we will do that. And the first great thing we can do is launch this pressure campaign against PSL and demand that they call off their demonstration, right? Call off their pro-NATO riot. Just call it off. Call it off. So I'm figuring out ways that we can launch this pressure campaign. I think it's a very important thing for us to do. It's not about changing their minds. It's not about recruiting them. It is about showing people what side we're on. There are two sides. There is the Trump derangement side. There is the weapons to Ukraine side. There is the Rachel Maddow side. And then there is the side of the American working families that want peace. They want peace with Russia, want peace with China, and want economic development. They reject degrowth and impoverishment. They reject the low-wage police state. And that's what side we're on. We're on the side of the American people in their millions that don't want war with Russia, don't want war with China, don't want economic degrowth, don't want impoverishment, don't want the bridges and highways to fall apart, don't want their kids to go to bad schools, don't want the roads and highways and drinking water to be crumbling and infested, etc. We need to rebuild America. And all that money, if you want to stimulate the U.S. economy, instead of spending money on this crazy U.S. foreign policy establishment, how about you spend money on America? How about you provide health care to people? How about you provide education to people? How about you provide new jobs by building? There's ways you could spend money and create a lot of jobs by making a stronger America, not strengthening this global regime change apparatus. And that needs to be loudly communicated to our leaders at this time. So that's the context in which I view the attempted coup in South Korea today. So yeah, I'm going to show some videos here. We got one super chat that has come in. We've got, do we have any? We got a couple Rumble rants. We got 2 Rumble rants that have come on. But yeah, let's do the roll call. Names and locations. And then I'll show some videos, and then I'll answer people's questions. So names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Alan in Virginia is with us. Welcome, Alan. Good to have you with us tonight. Gleb. Okay, great. A super chat. Very good. Jacob in Wisconsin. Welcome. Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland, Ohio. John McCarthy in Chicago, Auckland, New Zealand. Courtney in Northern Virginia, Tony in Tasmania, Ryan in Kansas City, Pyongyang, North Korea, Jenny in Cincinnati, Luca in Singapore, Hillary in Wales, Kari in Pacific Northwest, Stephen in Denmark, Alex in Brazil, Ian Chester in England, Ottawa, Ontario, Jim in Miami, Mohsen from Iran. Names and locations, folks. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? We got Wolf in Central Florida. Wolf. We got Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, Canada. We got Jordan in Tampa Bay. Dan Niswander in the LA area. Shout out to Dan, doing great work. Greg and Catherine in Toronto. Hot Dog, China. Very good. Very good. Names and locations. We got Anthony in Detroit. St. David's, Bermuda. Welcome. St. David's, Bermuda. Welcome. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? All right. Now, I wanted to show this video because, I don't want to focus on this. All right. Oh, we got Samuel in Waterdam. Enjoyed my talk with Garland. Jay from the UK. I don't want to focus on this too much. We knew it was coming. We knew Biden was going to, pardon his son. We knew that was going to happen. Anyone who doubted that was being, was deluding themselves. There's no question that Biden was going to pardon Hunter, right? That's just what was going to happen, right? I mean, it is what it is. Nothing we can do about it. But the hypocrisy of Joe Biden, who authored the crime bill, pardoning his son. There's a video that was circulating that highlighted that hypocrisy that I think is worth watching. So I'm going to start out by showing that.
You have a piece of crack cocaine, no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can take everything you own. Everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
Now, when you see the video of Hunter Biden smoking that crack and you hear that rhetoric from Joe Biden, I mean, if that doesn't make you angry, and all the times they lied and said they wouldn't pardon Hunter Biden, and I mean, if that doesn't make you angry that Biden literally wrote the crime bill and then turned around and did this, if that doesn't make you angry, I don't know what to say. It's infuriating, absolutely infuriating. Now, thank you, Miss Richie Blackmore. Yes, Tucker Carlson is in Moscow right now. I will address that super chat. I'm excited about that. I mean, I'm hoping that we can get some world peace. But I think the next thing I'm going to do before I start answering people's questions, I see we've got a couple Rumble rants and we got 3 super chats. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show our letter to Donald Trump. We are doing our best to get this letter to Trump out there, to circulate our Trump letter. We are getting this video everywhere. We are trying to circulate this video. And so I'm going to show the video, and I'm going to ask you once again to send it to everyone you know. Let's watch it, because I'm just in awe of the brilliant filmmaking of Peter Coffin. Here we go.
Official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House.
A sweeping and stunning victory, unlike any in our history.
Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time.
Donald Trump, a convicted felon who survived 2 assassination attempts, making a remarkable comeback to become the next president of the United States.
He's so evil! Nazi! Break out the vote!
It was a terrible night.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Dear President Donald Trump, we've all spent the last year being told Donald Trump can never win again.
But as we went and spoke with regular voters,
that's never been what they seem to think.
As we predicted, you won.
Because the system that dominates the world, the system these people live in, is in complete crisis.
Imperialism, the old order of the world ruled by big banks and monopolies, is becoming more unstable by the day.
It is relentlessly driving working families' living standards down
and pushing us towards new wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised peace.
You promised peace.
You promised peace.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised swift government action to improve their lives.
Together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. Success is going to bring us together.
Americans voted for you because you promised to protect our freedoms.
We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve.
Americans voted for you because you promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
To the rich and the greedy.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
And put the people's needs first.
And put our needs first.
I want you to imagine how much better our future can be if we declare independence from the elites who led us from one financial and foreign policy disaster to another.
While many exclusively focus on the negative realities of a political campaign, we remember your Quantum Leap speech, where you rolled out some extraordinary ideas for completely rebuilding this country.
Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system. Magnificent it was. And they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the Earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living.
We're writing this letter to let you know who we are.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political
We
Innovation.
are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political
The
Innovation.
Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
We're innovationist
And anti-imperialist.
We are patriotic Americans
who want to see the power of Wall Street and London defeated.
And a whole new America rebuilt on new foundations.
We exposed Kamala Harris and how dangerous she was back in 2020 with a book called Kamala Harris and the Future of America.
The book was on sale for 4 years without incident.
Then the very day she became the nominee, on July 22nd, Amazon banned our book without explanation.
They did not want people to hear the truth about her awful record. They did not want people to see how she was tied to the regime change apparatus and how she had been carefully groomed by the malevolent forces that ran the Hillary Clinton State Department.
Amazon banned our book for 7 days. Banning our book backfired. Many thousands of copies sold from July to November as people hungered for the truth about the woman we called the most dangerous presidential candidate in history.
We are proud to have spread truth about Kamala Harris and who she really is.
In the final month before the election, we were on the streets of New York City with a huge banner that said, "Only peace can make America great again."
We highlighted what we consider to be your greatest moment in your first term as president when you offered a hand of friendship to North Korea.
Our organization gives voice to what the overwhelming majority of Americans want.
Jobs, schools, economic development, and, most of all, an end to all the wars.
While many of your biggest supporters are tied to Israel, as a matter of basic human morality, you must stop the slaughter in Gaza.
As the president, you will have the power to cut off the money. The $18 million of our tax money that goes into Israel every day is $18 million too much.
You have the power to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israel lobby.
And the overwhelming majority of your supporters will back you in doing so.
You can end the war in Ukraine as well, as you have promised to do.
Russia is ready to sit down with you and make a deal.
You can lift the sanctions that are devaluing the US dollar.
You can cut off the billions of dollars in tax money that has been dumped into death and destruction.
There's an explosion of economic growth happening in Eurasia right now.
China's Belt and Road Initiative, Russia's Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS
are all full of new wealth being generated as people rise out of poverty with electrification, railway, and new living conditions.
America can get in on the action, and you can create a legacy of growth and prosperity by pushing to make it happen.
That money and technological progress doesn't need to be for everyone but us.
A share can come to our communities across the heartland and south that have been devastated by the globalist monopolies.
America can join the new world of growth and optimism and leave behind the dying world of globalist bankers.
A big step toward making that happen would be fulfilling the vision first put forward by one of Abraham Lincoln's advisors.
Build the Peace Bridge, connecting Alaska to the Russian Far East. Building that bridge over the Bering Strait would create millions of jobs and connect the United States to the wave of economic expansion happening in that region.
You also have the power to step in and protect Americans from the deep state.
You can make Facebook, YouTube, and other social media outlets stop censoring Americans who speak up.
You can free Ross Ulbricht. You can free Leonard Peltier.
We have paid particular attention to the Uhuru Three, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Omali Yeshitela.
Tucker Carlson highlighted their case in his program.
As part of the liberal Russia, Russia, Russia hysteria, they got charged with being foreign agents for their work building economic development among black people in Florida and Missouri.
You can pardon them for the absurd conspiracy conviction they received after being acquitted of the primary charge of being Russian agents.
You can repeal the absurd Foreign Agents Registration Act, a vaguely worded law
used to prosecute those who want to change U.S. foreign policy or do business overseas.
We know you can't do this alone. If you do, as you have promised, and clash with the deep state and the big monopolies,
you'll soon realize that there is one ally you desperately need: the American people.
The bulk of the population, those who voted for you because they just can't take it anymore, need to be pushed into action.
The American people are like a sleeping lion that can awaken and roar louder than ever when the time is right.
The country needs a mass movement. It's happened before, and it will happen again.
We defeated the British Empire. We smashed the slavocracy of plantation owners. We built the labor unions and won women the right to vote. We ended the Vietnam War, and we destroyed legal segregation.
The changes that the overwhelming majority of the American people want will not come about as a result of some savior in the White House.
No matter how adept of a political leader you might be.
The masses of people in their millions are the makers of history.
And it will take an upsurge of democratic participation to bring about what this country really needs.
A government of action.
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 To fight for working families.
You are in a very important position as arguably the most powerful person in the world right now.
President of the United States.
We urge you to stop the emerging low-wage police state. We urge you to stop the march towards World War III.
We urge you to help energize and mobilize a population to assert their will over the greed of the rich and powerful.
We're building a movement of anti-imperialists here in America.
People who love their neighborhoods, cities, and communities and see that protecting them is more urgent now than ever.
We consistently look to the future optimistically and see many promising possibilities in your re-election.
However, as with all politicians, especially presidents, we cannot and will not offer blind support.
Our goals are peace and prosperity for all, and we won't hesitate to criticize you if you stand in the way.
Millions and millions of working families are counting on you, Donald.
Not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Find the strength within yourself and your relationship with God to be the hero the world desperately needs.
It may not be your first instinct, and it may even fly in the face of much of what you've said, believed, and even promised.
But it is a surefire way to find your name imprinted in the history books for centuries.
We train our members to understand the world and how it works. More importantly, how to change things.
You will hear a lot from us in the next 4 years.
And if and when you stand up to the forces of darkness and empire, we will always have your back. See you at the inauguration.
So we need people to send this video to everyone they know. all your family members, all your coworkers, all your classmates, all your neighbors. Get this video to everyone. It is only 11 minutes long, and it is really, 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 really important that you get this to everyone. I am in discussion with the Washington Times right now about getting this ad printed as printed. I mean, we're trying to see if we can pull it off. We're going to have to raise a lot of money, but I think we can do it. And I think this is a really important project. But share this video with everybody, everyone that you know. Here's the text with the video on our website. Here's the Twitter video. I mean, it's on YouTube. Get this video to everyone. Everyone must see this video, right? If you have not sent it to people yet, please send it to everyone. This video must be widely viewed. You need to get this video to as many people as you possibly can. We are doing everything we can to build it. When I know what the deal is with the Washington Times and all of that, we will start fundraising and going around to different donors and figuring out if we can get it in the Washington Times as a full page ad. We're having an event, at a hotel in DC on Inauguration Day, working out the details of that. We're going full speed ahead. Now is the time. We've got to prove ourselves. Donald Trump is coming into office. As I predicted, I said, you remember, if you listen to these streams back in July, I said there's 3 possible outcomes. 1, Kamala Harris wins. That'll be a nightmare. 2, Donald Trump wins and the establishment amps up all the bad things about Trumpism. I said there was a 3rd possibility, which is that Donald Trump would come into office at odds with the bulk of his own class, at odds with the rich and powerful, at odds with the foreign policy establishment. It appears that option number 3 may be what is happening. Now, there's huge opportunities here. I don't know how long the door is going to be open, how long the window is going to be open. Things could snap shut pretty soon. I don't know. But we have got to get as much as we can done for the cause of peace while the door is open before this opportunity ends. And with this new administration coming in, this is a great opportunity to do what needs to be done. So we got to take advantage of it. So get this letter to everyone and become a member of the Center for Political Innovation. Join CPI, right? Become a member, a dues-paying member. Come to our Saturday meetings. Figure out how we can win. We're doing it, and we need you to help us do it. So become a dues-paying member. Be involved in our activities. Be with us at the inauguration in January. Full speed ahead. Pedal to the metal. Now is the time. All right. So now I'm going to start answering people's questions. We'll do the Rumble rants first. Okay. So first Rumble rant is from Leo Messi. And he says, Elon and Dr. Umar's State Department approved dissidents. Elon Musk, he's a complex figure, right? I mean, he very much plays up the image of being some kind of industrialist from the Gilded Age. He wants to be kind of seen as a self-made man. It is very much a cultivated image. But he has said some good things about Russia and Ukraine, and he said some good things on different issues, but he's all over the place. Elon Musk is not the person I'm the most excited about. I'll be honest with you, right? And Maduro and Elon Musk certainly don't get along. And Elon Musk, of all the people, I'm not thrilled about him exactly, but he's a little bit of a firebrand. He is at odds, so that's something. Next super chat. Newt Gingrich said on Fox, Trump isn't one of them. He's not initiated in the secret club. I agree. And that's what I've been trying to communicate to all of you. And there's not literally a secret club. All right. There's no Illuminati or thing high up on the thing, but there is this Washington foreign policy establishment, and they all hang out at the Bohemian Grove, and they all went to the same colleges and universities, Yale and Harvard, and they all know each other, and they all get vetted and approved by the same people. And Trump is not one of those. He's just not, right? And that's what they don't like about him. And Trump is very self-interested. He's not interested in furthering the agenda of their club. He's interested in advancing Donald Trump. That's what my position on him has always been. So, I mean, I don't think Newt Gingrich is off when he says that. I think he's right on point. Wouldn't people get the occupation of Palestine better if they knew that Ergun and Stern were literal terrorists that we put into office and the Secret Service there. Well, Ergun, the Ergun organization, so when Israel was started, right, Zionism was originally centered around something called the World Zionist Organization, which was established by Theodore Herzl in Britain. And the political party that was most aligned with the World Zionist Organization was what was called Haganah, which was the Israeli Labor Party. And they started a militia in Palestine that fought on the side of the British in World War II, that murdered Palestinians, etc. And they were social democrats. They were not Marxist communists. They were social democrats. They were pro-imperialist, pro-British Empire, social democrats. That was the main current of Zionism, right? And still to this day, the Israeli Labor Party is the main Israeli group. There was a breakaway from the World Zionist Organization that was called the revisionist movement. And the revisionist movement is basically people that were in the Israeli, in the Zionist movement that wanted to embrace ethnic nationalism full on. They did not like the kind of liberal social democratic way that Zionism was moving, so they formed the revisionist party. And they argued that Jews should see themselves as a nation struggling against other nations. They should embrace nationalism. And while the Israeli, the Labor Party and the World Zionist Organization were very upset when Hitler took power, Ergun and the revisionist party, they said Hitler taking power was a good thing because it would force many Jews to move to Palestine. And revisionism, or right-wing Zionism, which eventually laid the basis for what's called the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party in Israel, they are like the breakaway from mainstream Zionism, which was social democratic, and they are hard, like kind of right-wing nationalists. And many of their founders did praise Hitler and did praise Mussolini, and they did say they were things like, we are Jewish national socialists, etc. And that was, yeah. And Ergun, they were on Hitler's side in World War II, and they bombed and targeted the British rather than the Nazis, right? So yeah, that's an important detail that is forgotten. I believe Hannah Arendt wrote a very important book documenting collaboration between the right wing of Zionism and the Nazis, right? The cooperation that they went through. The bulk of Zionists were anti-Hitler, and the bulk of Zionists were liberals, like social democratic liberals. But the right wing, the revisionist party and their militia that they started called Ergun, they had a different feeling. And now it is their politics today that is primary in Israel, right? Israel's kind of backed away from its liberal image that it started with, and it's right-wing kind of Zionist nationalism that is the primary view among Israelis. It's an important piece of history. I don't know how much it would change people's minds. I wish it would change people's minds, but this kind of history doesn't really change people's minds. Similarly, if people knew the West already took Eastern Europe and 5 stand nations and continue to try and steal Georgia, wouldn't more get it? Like taking Texas and we lay down. Well, again, right? The way the USA portrays it is these countries are independent. Right? They're independent if the USA controls them. And they're, if they start to assert their independence and do business with Russia, then they're under the control of Putin, right? US media frames it up differently. But yes, right now the USA is stirring up all kinds of unrest in Georgia, trying to destabilize Georgia for Wall Street and against Russia. And it's very provocative, and it's not going to work. So there you go. Twitter just locked Consortium News board member Kathy Bogan's account and banned Consortium altogether. I saw that, and that is completely outrageous. And I certainly don't feel good about that. I need to quickly put a video on and be right back. I need to do something. I need to just take a little bit of a break while I put on the video of us doing Peace MAGA in Madison Square Garden, but I'll be right back. There we go. So we're here on 34th Street, and the crowds have lined up. They're going in to see Trump speak. We've got our banner. We're handing out our palm cards, spreading the message.
Like a concert, but bigger. I see the lines of people going block after block after block after block, and makes you wonder, is the media, the mainstream media, really telling you the truth about how unpopular Donald Trump actually is?
This administration is evil, and we need to bring America back and make America godly again. Make America great again.
Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. This was a great moment when Trump talked to Kim Jong-un and started the process of peace on the Korean Peninsula. And we want to see peace not just with North Korea, but with Russia, with China, with many countries around the world. It is outrageous that billions of dollars is being spent on prolonging the war in Ukraine when our people can't get relief in North Carolina. People are left behind in Georgia and North Carolina. They can't get the relief they need. This is outrageous. Our government is more concerned with waging wars around the world than for caring for our own people. And we need a president who will put America first, a president who will bring peace around the world. Only peace can make America great again. Yeah, you think Trump could be a peace president?
I think he can, as long as he surrounds himself with people who have peace in mind. My concern, I'm a voter, I'm concerned about everything. He's surrounding himself with a lot of people from big tech, and big tech has pretty much been now part of the military-industrial complex, so that's slightly concerning, but I think if Trump surrounds himself with good people, I think so.
I appreciate Trump and all his efforts.
You like the banner, huh?
I do.
Yeah, are you worried about war, the danger of war?
I am, and I know I'm confident that Trump can put an end to it.
They're marching us toward World War III, and they're taking our freedoms away. While they do it, we have got to stand up. Kamala Harris represents the most vile factions of the deep state, the regime change apparatus. Yeah, what do you think about how Kamala Harris, I mean, it seems like she's locking up her political opponents, trying to put people in jail, trying to put Trump in jail so she can win the election?
They'll do anything to stay in power.
You're a Kennedy fan, I can see, huh?
I am, yes.
Yeah, he's bold, sticking up about the vaccines and all of that.
He is, but I think it's important. When you have a lot of mainstream publications who refuse to report on a lot of the stories that people have, I think it only adds more validity to what Kennedy's been saying about big pharma, big ag.
This is a man of peace. This is a man that can do it. This is a man that can make things happen. Everybody saying war, war, war. This man is for peace, he's for unity, he's for the black, he's for the white, he's for everybody. This is a man alive. Yeah. Don't worry about what the fake media say. 100% the right man for the job.
We want peace between all different races and nationalities in the world. This is how they are. I'm here advocating peace and he's calling me a Nazi. Didn't the Nazis start a big war? Didn't the Nazis take people's freedom away? This is how they are. This is exactly how they are. You're a Nazi if you want peace. This is how sick they are. You're standing here saying you want peace and he's calling us Nazis for wanting peace. I'm standing here for peace and they call you a Nazi. This is how sick the woke left is. It's Nazism to want peace. I'm a patriot. I love my country, and loving your country means you don't want a war. I am a patriot. I love America, and I don't want World War III. Only peace can make America great again. Trump wants to negotiate. He wants to trade with countries around the world rather than bombing them. He wants to end these insane sanctions that are weakening the dollar around the world, and he wants to open up trade and friendship. Peace starts with trade and doing business.
Obama couldn't do it. Bush couldn't do it. He did it. For that reason, I'm giving my vote for him. I'm from New York City here. I'm voting for him.
About yourself, you and I go back to Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, we go back to Occupy Wall Street. I started off with the Jersey City Peace Movement. We're all about saying no to wars. And that's why I've come out to stand here with this sign, because World War III is a bad thing to get ourselves involved with. And seeing who Kamala Harris these days is surrounding herself with, the likes of Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney and these neocon warmongers that just won't leave us alone.
What do you think? What do you think?
Excellent.
That was a great moment when he met with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, he has the respect of people around the world, unlike Kamala.
Absolutely.
No one has any respect for her.
I say America first, not Ukraine first. I say America first, not Israel first. Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. This is the... No problem. How are people liking it? Good? He's a deal maker, and this should just be the beginning. I can't wait until Donald Trump shakes hands with Putin. I can't wait until Donald Trump shakes hands with Xi Jinping. I can't wait until Donald Trump shakes hands with the Iranians and with the Cubans all around the world. Only peace can make America great again. And it's time that we do business. There's a whole new economy in the world. If you look at the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, all these countries are rising up from poverty and building new railways and all that. We should trade with them. We should get some of that money for America. America shouldn't be trying to lock the world out. Our dollar is losing value because of this silly policy.
All right. All right. Thanks for waiting, everybody. All right. And now I will continue to answer the super chats. Consortium news being banned from Facebook and Twitter is absolutely outrageous, right? And my understanding of how these things are done, being a victim of censorship myself when they banned my book on Kamala Harris, it appears to me that what happens is a 3-letter agency makes a call. They make a phone call, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA or whatever calls up so-and-so and says, take this group down, right? And then they take it down. That's the way this works. And my hope is that, look, I am telling people, I want to see how much social media changes with Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. Now, it may not change at all. I'm not ruling that out. And then we'll know. And it may change a whole lot, and it may change in some ways, but not in others. And I think it'll be very, very interesting to read the tea leaves, so to speak, and see how social media changes based on the way that the intelligence agencies change and the direction of the intelligence agencies changes. I'm very, very, very curious. I think it's an interesting question. I don't know how social media will change, but I have a feeling that it will. And what I'm curious about is how will it change? And I think we should pay close attention. It's part of why I would like to see, very much, I would like to see Tulsi Gabbard become the Director of National Intelligence. We can know how much of the crap that goes on the internet is intelligence related, where it came from. We can kind of know how much it's possible to change aspects of the covert manipulation of social media. I mean, I'm not saying anything will change, but we'll be able to navigate a little more clearly, right? We are in very, very, very strange times. All right. Trump's plan to build entirely new cities, realistic or a pipe dream? Well, I think it's related to the fact that Trump is aligned with people who want a prosperous, strong economy in the United States. And I think there's a lot of American business owners that would like to see a bigger population here, would like to see more development here and building new cities. So what Trump promised to do in his quantum leap speech, I think is good. And I think it's admirable. And I think it has the support of a lot of people. But doing it would require, some executive power, some strength. I mean, he would have to, roll over the opposition he would face. And he would have to mobilize the government to actually do it. I think he could do it. I think he very well could do it. So we shall see. Tucker Carlson just spoke to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. I pray that enough people wake up. Yes, I saw that Tucker Carlson is in Russia, and that he's there because he's trying to negotiate peace, right? And he's there as part of the Trump team, and he's trying to make sure that we don't have World War III, because Biden has crossed Russia's red line and is shooting long-range missiles into Russia. And Russia is saying, look, we have the right to retaliate against the United States and against all the NATO countries at this point. And, it's a really messy situation, and we don't know what's going to happen. But honestly, the fact that Tucker Carlson stuck up for Uhuru, that's amazing, right? Don't anyone give me this, he's racist, he's this and that. There's a group of black revolutionaries who were indicted by the American government for being foreign agents. And all the socialists and communists didn't have their back because Russia bad. And Tucker Carlson did. So don't anybody tell me about, Tucker Carlson, he's written. No. Like, if he spoke up for Uhuru, and you all didn't, right? And the Answer Coalition and the Party for Socialism actually tried to cancel their rally last year And you want to tell me that I should not like Tucker, but I should like you all? No, doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. So I think highly of Tucker Carlson. I think his interview with Putin was amazing. It was very powerful. And the fact that he has defended Uhuru is also powerful. And yeah, I hope that he's there and he does good work. He's stuck up for Tara Reid, who's also a friend of mine. So more power to Tucker. Have you read Felix Abbott's book about North Korea? He talks about how he opened up a company and got shut down by sanctions. I have not. Martin Hart Landsberg's book, which I may have up there, right? Yeah, I have, what is it? Korea Division Reunification in U.S. Foreign Policy. This is a very good book to read. I recommend this, from Monthly Review Press by Martin Hart Landsberg. I recommend North Korea, Another Country, which is by Bruce Cummings. Korea's Place in the Sun, also by Bruce Cummings. Those are the texts that I would encourage people to read. I would also encourage you to just read Kim Il-sung, and I'd encourage you to read, their actual writings, etc. I did post a documentary about North Korea from the 90s from an African-American television program. I posted that on the other YouTube channel. I have this other YouTube channel where I post stuff that's like, there's not room for on this channel, right? I know notifications are a big part of YouTube, and so I'm trying to play the game and get views to some degree. So I've created this other channel, just FYI, where I post other stuff, basically, like clips from this channel, but also like documentaries, also old speeches, archival material, etc. So if you want to keep up with, some of the other stuff I do, go subscribe to Caleb Maupin Videos. And here's the link. Go subscribe to Caleb Maupin Videos. I post other stuff on this channel, right? Stuff that I would like to be online, music, old videos. One of the things I posted on there was a documentary about North Korea from black journalists that went there in the 90s. And it was for an African-American, local access TV show. And they went to North Korea and they filmed it the whole time. And I put that on there because I want people to see that. And it's, I think it's Communist Party USA people that went there. I don't know, but it's an African-American, local access show. They went to North Korea in the 90s. So I posted that video. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. Have you seen Tony Cliff's article, Russia, a Marxist Analysis? It's a hit piece on Lenin and Stalin, how their revolution failed. I have not. So Tony Cliff is a very prominent British Trotskyist, and he is like the worst kind, right? Trotskyism, I don't think Trotsky was, I think his theory of permanent revolution was not good. I think Trotsky was not really anti-imperialist, and I am very opposed to Trotskyism. That said, there are certain Trotskyites that did good work, like Sam Marcy, for example, Jerry Healy, who I did a show on over the weekend. So some Trotskyists can do good stuff, but I overall think that the Trotskyite ideology is Eurocentric. The theory of permanent revolution is not good. They hold on to the worst aspects of Marxism. And they are not really anti-imperialist, and they have a fetish for violence and social liberalism. I'm pretty against Trotskyism. But that said, Trotskyites generally divide into three categories. There are three branches or wings of Trotskyism. The first is mainline Trotskyism. And those are people like Socialist Alternative, people like the Socialist Workers' Party in the United States, people like the Militant Tendency in Britain. And those folks, they are really into labor unions. They promote labor unions. I agree with that. And they're not really anti-imperialist, but they kind of are. They'll say nice things about Cuba sometimes. They'll kind of oppose U.S. wars, but they're not really consistently anti-imperialist. But part of them kind of knows they should be, but they're not, and they're really into labor unions. It's mainline Trotskyism. Then there's a wing of Trotskyism they call orthodox Trotskyism. And orthodox Trotskyism is bonkers Trotskyism. It's Trotskyism that, these are people that believe in space aliens. These are people that say World War II is still happening because Trotsky said World War II could only end with world revolution. So therefore, World War II must still be happening. Some of them want to legalize pedophilia. Some of them, I mean, they have some pretty wacky beliefs. Those are orthodox Trotskyists. And there's like the Spartacist League, the World Socialist website, and Jerry Healy, who I admired there. He was one of these weird Trotskyists, right? He believed that Trotsky was assassinated in a joint operation between the KGB and the American government. That's bonkers. But to be fair, Jerry Healy, you saw, because he was so intense in his ideology, he became a really pro-Palestine activist and a good friend of Gaddafi, right? And, the World Socialist website, they have some strange beliefs, but because they hold on to their ideology, they were key in supporting Julian Assange, that they do good things sometimes because they have very extreme beliefs that they are very serious and committed to. So those are orthodox Trotskyists. And then there's the third category of Trotskyists, which are what they call neo-Trotskyites or third camp Trotskyites. And that, is the ISO, the International Socialist Organization in the United States that no longer exists, the British Socialist Workers' Party, and Tony Cliff is the father of what they call third camp Trotskyism, which rejects outright all the socialist countries. Says that they're not really socialist because the bureaucracy that led the Soviet government, or that leads the various communist countries, constitutes a class, right? That they're a class that's exploiting them and that it's a capitalist society. It clearly isn't, right? As much as there was inequality in the Soviet Union, as much as the Soviet Union was very corrupt and there was injustice, etc., the economy did not function according to profit. The economy functioned based on what the central planners said. It was a centrally planned state-run economy. And there was a fundamental economic difference. Marx explained very clearly what capitalism is. Capitalism is profits in command, preliminary transformation. The Soviet Union was not that. I mean, it had a rationally organized economy. But Tony Cliff, the bureaucracy, they make money. They're just like the capitalist class. It's just capitalism. It's state capitalism. That is the third camp of Trotskyism. That's where Tony Cliff comes out of. And I have never had an interest in those people. I really never have, because my whole thing, the whole reason I went down this route, and it's funny because I don't even call myself a communist anymore, but the whole reason I went down this route, this rabbit hole, is because I was told my whole life, I grew up in a small town, communism never worked. It never had any economic successes. It never worked. And all it leads to is death and starving and all of that. And I discovered at a young age basic economic data about the Soviet Union, about their industrial development, about how they built the modern steel industries and all of that. And that flew in the face of everything I'd been told about communism. And then the U.S. government invaded Iraq. And they'd invaded Iraq based on lies about weapons of mass destruction. And they did all this propaganda. Saddam Hussein is an evil dictator, killing his own people, has got weapons of mass destruction. And they lied in order to get us into war. And I realized that the U.S. war apparatus and the propaganda the American government spreads about these countries around the world is not true. And that a lot of these countries are trying to raise themselves up out of poverty and et cetera. And that's not true. So when I first encountered third camp Trotskyites, I was a high school student. And I went to a protest in Columbus, Ohio, and there was the International Socialist Organization, and they had a literature table. And they sold me a copy of their newspaper for $1. And so I bought their newspaper, and I read in their newspaper, in every issue, they had their like 5 main points or 3 main points or whatever. And so I opened it, and it said, the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, North Korea, these countries have nothing to do with socialism. And that was in every issue of their paper. And I just immediately, I had no interest in talking to them, because if you're not countering the lies that we're told that, everyone was just poor and starving and miserable the whole time in the Soviet Union, obviously not true. If you're not sticking up for the countries that are under attack by American imperialism, what are you doing? It's funny because I don't even call myself a communist anymore, because communism at this point is somebody else's private property. It's the private property of some evil people and all of that. So I don't really, it's kind of interesting. I don't even use the label of communism anymore, but I stand with countries that are under attack. I'm with Russia. I'm with China. I'm with Iran. I'm with Venezuela. I'm with the people of the world that are under attack. And I'm with the American working class that is also under attack. And I'm with the Uhuru movement. They're under attack. And our main enemy is at home. It's Wall Street and the Pentagon and the ultra-rich monopolies that are destroying our lives and country and marching us toward World War III. That's our main enemy. And we need to build a working class movement to fight imperialism. Imperialism is the enemy of humanity. So when I see people, the first thing out of their mouth is, we denounce all the countries that are under attack by American imperialism. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I really am not. And there's a lot of people who do a whole song and dance. They're Marxists, they're socialists, they're this, but they're not against imperialism. So who cares? And at this point, I don't even call myself a communist. Calling yourself a communist is pretty irrelevant, right? To most Americans, calling yourself a communist means you're woke, and I'm not woke. I'm not woke. I'm a Christian. I'm not woke. I believe in justice and stability. I want economic development. I don't want degrowth. I don't want instability. I don't want to cancel Trump supporters. I don't want to force the trans agenda on people. I'm not woke. I am in favor of a government of action that fights for working families. I'm opposed to globalism, imperialism. I'm not woke. And unfortunately, at this point, the word communist just means that you're woke. And also, most of the anti-imperialist forces in the world today are not communist. The Iranians are not communists. The Bolivarians are not communist. And that even the communist countries have changed what they mean by it, right? They have market sectors and stuff. I'm an anti-imperialist. I stand with those who are struggling against imperialism around the world and at home. I am an innovationist because I believe in human growth and creativity, and I believe that the main force holding back human growth and creativity is imperialism. Imperialism, globalism, is holding back the ability of human beings to build and create and expand. And I think we need a government of action that will unleash human creativity and growth to higher levels. So I'm not a communist in the American sense. I am an innovationist. I am opposed to globalism, imperialism. That's what I am. And the global communist movement, at least in the Western countries, has completely deteriorated into something I'm against. And American working people who don't want World War III, who don't want degrowth and don't want cancel culture, they're against the communists. And I'm with them. I'm against the communists, right? The communists of America want degrowth, and I am for growth. The communists of America hate Russia, and I stand with Russia. The communists of America stabbed the Uhuru movement in the back and basically are allowing the American government to throw leaders of a black organization in jail. I'm with the Uhuru movement. The communists are on the wrong side. So I'm not a communist. I can't be a communist when the communists are on the wrong side. I'm with the American people who are against imperialism. I'm with the Uhuru movement. I'm with the people of the world and the countries around the world that are struggling against imperialism. I'm for human growth and creativity. So I'm not a communist. I am an innovationist. The Fabian Society. Well, Fabian socialism, I've done videos on it. I mean, that is a gradualist ideology. It's the idea that it was a wing of social democracy. It was a school of thought among the British Labour Party and social democracy that we could implement socialism gradually. But as you will see, if you read the writings of H.G. Wells and the proponents of it, it was much more than that. It was a movement for social engineering. The Fabians were Malthusians. They wanted to reduce the population. They wanted to control the masses of people. They were anti-populist, anti-working class. To them, socialism meant economic control, right, is what it meant. For them, socialism meant we have the government kind of control the economy to stabilize things. But they were not, they were not in favor of what I'm in favor of. They definitely were not anti-imperialists. They definitely were not, supporters of working people. They are for social engineering, and they took kind of the Marxist understanding that capitalism has instability, and based on that, they kind of cultivated the elitist British Empire mentality. I did a whole video critiquing H.G. Wells on this stream. If you go into live streams and go a few back, you can see the video I did where I read from his book, The New World Order, and I talked about his film of the the time machine, and I'm not in favor. You think it's a Starfleet uniform? Is that what this looks like? Oh, that's interesting. There you go. Am I Captain Kirk for the evening? But there you go. There you go. I'm very critical, and actually I will post that Fabian socialism video. Maybe I'll have that premiere tomorrow because we should preserve that. Thank you, Alex. All right. You're number one on global affairs. Thanks, from Bakersfield, California. Right back at you. Thank you. I am all about global affairs. I am not a news junkie. I am very much driven by ideology. We talk a lot about literature and books and history and ideas here. You know, this isn't exactly a news channel. I do talk about news and current events, but I'm not like, this isn't like, I'm not just on here reporting the news. I'm on here giving my opinion, explaining worldview, etc. So yeah, there you go. You know, thank you. Thank you. Please, you know, subscriptions are always great. Please join the Center for Political Innovation, etc. Looking at the Stalin era, the integration of the population into the movement overrode individual societies was the priority. No, Stalin really emphasized the nationalities. There's a great book. I think I have it here. He really emphasized the national minorities. There's a book called The Siberians, right, which was about, and there's another book called Soviet but Not Russian, about all the different nationalities. And that actually that's one thing that Putin is very critical of the Soviet Union for doing, of Lenin especially, but also a little bit of Stalin, is that they really, really emphasized national differences among the peoples of the Soviet Union. Yeah, Soviet but not Russian. This is a book all about, the different nationalities in the former Soviet Union. And there was a really, really big effort to kind of emphasize the national differences that existed. And that, Ukrainian is not a written language originally. It was originally just a spoken language. Almost, it's very similar to Russian, but it's got some key differences. Well, it was because of the Soviet Union, they made it a written language, and they went out of their way to give them their own alphabet and emphasize national differences. The same with Belarus, and the same with a lot of these different, the Soviet Union was really, really big on emphasizing national differences. And Putin has said actually that was not a good thing to do because it led to kind of, dividing the peoples, right? And that was not helpful. Putin's actually rather critical of those policies of Lenin especially, but also of Stalin. Many people don't realize that when the Soviet Union fell, the nationalities other than Russian, the non-Russians voted at a higher rate to keep the Soviet Union. The Ukrainians, the Belarusians, the Kazakh people, the Uzbekistan people, they voted much higher to keep the Soviet Union, and they lost a lot more when the Soviet Union fell. The Soviet Union really lost a lot. The Russians suffered and all that, but the peoples in the smaller republics, they really suffered. They really, really suffered, when the Soviet Union fell. All right, folks. Well, it's been 2 hours, and it's been 2 hours. We answered a lot of questions. This isn't going to be an all-night marathon. I think I'm probably going to end it here. But we'll be back, hopefully tomorrow night, dare to struggle, dare to win. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We really need you to join. Now is the time to join. We really, 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 really need you to join CPI. Become a dues-paying member. In the past, many of you have joined, and then we had to liquidate our nonprofit, and then we just reincorporated. So we need you to join. Again, we need you to become a member. So go to the CPI website, cpiusa.org, and join. Hey, and if you don't want to be active, you just want to donate by joining, that's fine. But we need memberships. We need people paying membership dues in CPI. It is very, very much what we need right now. So if you were previously a member of CPI, please rejoin on the website. If you have not yet rejoined, please do so. If you have never been a member before, you're welcome to join. And after that, you'll start getting invited to the weekly membership meetings. And if you want to become active, that would be even better. We'd love to have more active members. But the first step to do is we need you to go to the website and become a member. We need to raise the number of dues-paying members of CPI. Go to the CPI USA website, cpiusa.org, and hit join. We need you to join. All right. Thanks, everybody. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the People of all countries must get prepared. Revolution is the main trend in the world today.